Welcome Internet, today is part 3 of the ambulance long tube header install. Gonna be awesome. I hope you're ready for all this. If you just watched part 2 of the Lance header install, you just saw me grind, flapper wheel, degrease, metal prep, and finally paint these long tube headers with high temperature header paint. These have been curing for about a day and a half now. I painted these a little over 36 hours ago. We have them suspended from my rafters for ease of paint and drying, and they are ready to be installed. Now, these were painted with Pour 15 high temperature spray paint. These are rated to 1200 degrees Fahrenheit, and in the instructions, these are actually required to be baked at 400 degrees for about 2 hours or so. Unfortunately, my oven is not large enough to hold these, so we are going to bake these by actually just installing them and then running the engine. And that'll bring them up to temperature for quite a while, and that will be the baking process. Here's what we used. Pour 15 high temp heat resistant paint, resists cracking, weather, salt, moisture resistant up to 1200 degrees Fahrenheit, and this is the aluminum color, which I think looks amazing on the headers. This install is incredibly exciting, but before we do that, we're going to be cleaning and degreasing this engine, especially along the cylinder heads and the exhaust ports over here, and along the valve covers too. So for that, we're going to be using some cleaner degreaser from Pour 15, Scotch-Brite pads, a little bit of toweling, and a lot of soapy water. So let's get into that. Okay, so the exhaust port mating surfaces are now cleaned and degreased. But before we go put the headers on, we're going to be cleaning off these nice copper header gaskets. And we're actually going to be using a sealer. So in order for the sealer to stick to this and provide an adequate seal, the sealer basically eliminates hot spots and provides a sealing like glue that will make sure that these header gaskets don't leak. This is what I'm going to be using. It's called Copper Spray Gasket by Permatex. I'll leave a link down in the description below if you want to purchase this yourself. It's pretty cheap. And this gets applied to both sides of the gaskets, and it just provides a better sealing surface, and it provides heat transfer too to the pipes, as it says right there. Before we get into the mounting and installing of the headers, I just want to say, quick side note, I know President Trump has been pushing to build his wall, and if it gets built before this video comes out, I just want to give sincere condolences to all of those who could not make it today. I know I see a few of you in the audience are missing. Sad day for those of you here. Please keep them in your thoughts and prayers. I'm going to pour one out for the homies that are not here today. Okay, for those of you who are still watching after that lame joke, let's get to cleaning these. Okay, we're going to let that set up. It's going to form like a glue-like substance in a few minutes. So while we're doing that, let's get the header into position. So after installing them, they look amazing. Turns out that the large 12-volt positive going to the starter, that cable now kind of intersects with the header pipes, and it kind of touches right there. So my solution is going to be using one of these spark plug boots. These are rated up to like 1200 degrees, and this is meant to go on your spark plug wires that go next to your header pipes. Well, I don't see any problem with using this and sliding it over that cable, so this part rests up against the header pipes, and that should do just fine for the heat. Okay, about to install the starter back on to the flywheel, and if you see right up there, that hole right there, that's where one of the bolt holes is for the starter. There's 2 bolts, and the way the starter works is the 12-volt positive from a battery relay goes into the starter, and then it grounds through the block of the motor from the shiny surface where the bolt pattern is right there. So you want to make sure that's extra clean, and make sure it's clean on the starter as well where it mates up to that surface. So I'm going to go ahead and install the starter and make sure all the wires are run and properly sanded, the connection points, and then we're going to put a little bit of dielectric grease to prevent corrosion. So, sweet thing about the header install is now we can get to the starter and the electrical connections from the top in the engine bay. So that's pretty sweet. So let's go get those hooked up. Alright, we got the entire starter put on, all the connections made to it. Now some last finishing touches. We're going to be using a silicone paste on all the connection points, and this just keeps corrosion and rust from happening on your connection points and making your starter not work. As well as we're going to be using new wire loom for some of these wires down here, and a little bit of electrical tape. I know it's the devil's fastener, but we have to use it here. Okay, everything's buttoned up. Now we're going to be installing spark plugs, and these are pretty awesome. They're called shorty plugs, and they're made specifically for headers because they are much shorter than the stock spark plug, because otherwise you're going to be burning the boots on the ends of the pipes right here. So that's why we're doing that. These have been gapped to 0.045 inches, and that's for a longer gap for a larger spark and a better flame propagation and flame front, and this just helps increase fuel economy. Here's a short comparison. As you can see, one is much shorter than the other. Alright, we got all 4 plugs in on this side. Looking good. Right now, we're going to be done with this side. We're going to move on to the other side and get that all buttoned up with the header on and the plugs. So let's go over there and clean any grease. So now again comes a time where we run into a potential issue on the Lance header install. So the problem is the header pipes are super dope, but the clearance issues become magnified with all these pipes running around. So the problem is the spark plugs, even though they are shorty plugs and they are shorter than the factory version, they are still a bit too long to get sockets on every single one of them. And I'll show you what I mean. So down here, where the spark plugs thread into the cylinder head, some of these you can see the clearance issues are rather apparent. The spark plug that goes down here in particular is hard to get to. Obviously you cannot get a box end wrench in there because this part down here is recessed where the hexagonal portion of the spark plug is, so you have to use a socket. Problem is, some of these sockets cannot get in there and then get a wrench on them. So obviously this is a short socket, it'll get onto it, but then you cannot get a wrench into the insert so you can turn that. And obviously if you use a deep well socket, well, you're not going to be able to get it past this pipe here. So this is an issue, but there's a solution. And of course that solution is give up. Now what we're really going to do is we're going to take a standard 5/8 inch socket like this, not deep well, just standard, and as you can see the spark plug fits in there and you can turn it easily and awesome, but you cannot get a wrench on the end of this to turn it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take the socket and I'm going to cut a notch into it about there, just so it goes past where the splines are in here, so you can slide it up onto the boot and then down. And additionally I'm going to be cutting notches on the back of this so you can get a wrench on there and then turn it. And I believe the combination of these things will allow me to slide this socket on there so we can tighten down the spark plug and then also get a wrench so we can get it turned and tightened. So we're going to go do that right now and fabricate a custom ambulance spark plug socket. So here's the setup. I'm going to be taking this Dremel tool with a cutoff wheel and I'm going to be cutting a notch right down the side of the socket right here, and I want it to be exactly the width of this ceramic on the spark plug so that I can slide it over the ceramic and then get to the thread, the turning bit down here. So I'm going to go ahead and mark this with a Sharpie, make a few more, measurements. Measure once, cut 3 times. I think it turned out pretty well. So that came out pretty well. Now I'm going to be adding notches on the back here so it can be turned with a box end wrench or crescent wrench. And that will complete the custom Lance spark plug socket. Well, I wouldn't say it's exactly pretty, but it should work just fine. So let me really show you why we had to make this custom socket for the Lance. Now of course, normally you'd be using a deep well socket like this, 1/2 inch drive, but as you can see, that definitely ain't gonna happen in this situation. And even over here too, yeah, not gonna happen. There's maybe 1 or 2 plugs on this entire V8 that this can access right now. So made this beautiful little socket right here. The end is ground down for 3/4 inch drive. You can use a box and wrench or a crescent wrench, obviously. And then this notch cutout goes right in here, and let me see if I can show you. This allows you to slip it on and over, and then boom, now you're on the hexagonal bit of the plug, and then you can turn it with a wrench from out here. So that just makes it a whole lot easier to get these plugs in. Little correction, this is actually about a 20mm drive, or about 13/16. So there you go. In my case, made a nice little 20mm 13/16 drive ratchet socket thing. Here's a little demonstration. And there you go. Spark plug has been tightened. Alright, all 8 spark plugs are in and they are tightened down. So now we move on to the final steps of the header install in the Lance. You're going to be replacing all these spark plug wires with brand new 10.5mm high intensity wires in red to make it just pop, and also new separators. Those will be in chrome. That'll also look pretty nice. And then additionally, we have spark plug boot protectors to go on the ends so they don't fry themselves on the header pipes. Let's get to it. So I'd say that just about does it for the G30 ambulance header install. Let's look at a before and after. Check that out. So much better. Love the red and the silver. just pops. Got new wire separators, billet aluminum, looking good, and above all, sounds amazing. More power, should be seeing better fuel economy in the future. Plus with that EFI swap coming up soon, things are looking good for the ambulance. So everything up front here looks amazing. Let me show you down below. We got brand new piping up at the front and then along the driver's side here with a brand new muffler to replace the blown out one. Now, I don't have a PhD in exhaust pipeology, but that looks pretty amazing. Still in the mail. All the new piping has been painted with high temperature exhaust paint, Pour 15 in aluminum, withstands up to 1200 degrees Fahrenheit. You spray it on, it dries, and then once the heat gets up to 400 degrees for about 2 hours, which this exhaust piping will more than achieve, it bakes on really hard, really tough coating, and prevents all that rust from happening. It all off, painted the exhaust tips in the same color to make it just pop. So I'd say that finishes it off. Lance header install completely done. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button because we have a ton more content coming. We're gonna be doing an EFI swap in this thing, getting rid of that old Quadrajet carburetor and putting in a nice Phi-Tech or equivalent brand EFI with a brand new intake manifold, intake piping, and we'll have injectors on each cylinder for awesome fuel management and more power, better fuel economy, lower emissions. Even though we technically don't have a Cadillac converter. It's gonna be awesome. Stay tuned for that. You won't want to miss it. It's gonna be a ton of cool content. This is Bread signing off.